So I've been a pretty big Christopher Nolan fan for the last 2 decades. He's produced some of my favorite films of all time, with two of my favorites being The Prestige and Oppenheimer. So for the last few months I've been eagerly awaiting an announcement just to see what his next movie is going to be. And apparently, it's going to be the Odyssey. And while I was initially really shocked, this makes a lot of sense. Nolan is notorious for trying to push what is possible in cinema, and while to some this has made his track record kind of hit or miss, one thing is for sure, it's always an interesting ride. And while I'm definitely interested to see how he tackles the Odyssey, if I'm being completely honest, I've never been more worried for a movie in my entire life. Now, for those of you that do not know, the Odyssey is a tremendous story. It was written thousands of years ago, and when people always talk about the original hero's journey, the original adventure, that's the Odyssey. It consists of 24 different epic poems by Homer, and it's written in ancient Greek. And the Odyssey is basically about Odysseus' 10-year-long journey trying to get back home after the Trojan War. I guess mild spoiler warning for what might be in the movie. If you don't want to know, just click off. But what ultimately should have been a relatively simple journey home turns into a 10-year-long adventure filled with trials, tribulations, and some horrible stuff. And some of these adventures may sound familiar if you've watched other Greek stories such as Percy Jackson. One of the first true trials and tribulations is the land of the Lotus Eaters. Basically, Odysseus and his crew land on an island filled with these people who eat these lotuses, and when you eat them, you basically lose all your desire to go home and do anything, and you kind of just chill around forever. Odysseus, being the Chad leader that he is, basically has to force his crew off of the island, and they move forward. Each of these epic poems is supposed to highlight a different part of what makes Odysseus a hero, and this one happens to be his desire to make it home and return to his wife. Another trial that inspired God knows how many other stories is the Cyclops. Odysseus and his crew go to an island to eat some sheep, and they end up getting trapped in a Cyclops' cave overnight, and Odysseus is forced to use his cunning to have him and his crew escape. Another major part of the Odyssey that I'm really interested to see how Nolan tries to tackle this is the idea of the gods being a part of the story. Zeus, Poseidon, Athena, Hermes, the whole 9 yards, they're all in the Odyssey. And it's not as if they're just mentioned in passing. No, they have a very active role in this story, with Zeus and Poseidon being particularly nasty to Odysseus at some times, and Athena being one of the main ones that actually has his back. So periodically throughout the story, when things are just finally going right for Odysseus, Poseidon will blow up a ship, Zeus will blow up his ship, he'll send a bunch of monsters to try and attack him. You get the picture. They don't like the dude. One of the more unfortunate and kind of ironic moments in Odysseus' story comes from the Bag of Winds. Basically, Odysseus receives this bag of wind and it's supposed to blow him in the right direction, but when he's actually like 100 feet from Ithaca, someone in his crew opens it stupidly and he gets blown completely off course and goes right back to where he started. Unfortunately, after this, he lands on an island filled with giant cannibals, and they do exactly what you would think cannibals do. They eat and murder most of his crew. Another long-term trial is when a powerful sorceress turns a bunch of his men into pigs, but through the help of Hermes, he is able to actually return them back, and then they just kind of lounge around for a year on this island because they've been through hell and back. Well, actually not yet, because they do end up going to the underworld. Odysseus basically wants to go there to speak to a prophet about how to proceed with his journey and somehow get back to Ithaca, and ironically enough, Hades, the god of death, the one who is portrayed as the big bad, is one of the only gods who doesn't really do any serious damage to him, at least not directly. Now, there are a bunch of other adventures and trials, but I'm not going to go over all of them in this video. There's already tons of great videos on YouTube about this, but one of the biggest ones is basically gets stuck as a love slave for 7 years, and this obviously is the bulk of what delays him from getting back to Ithaca. So not only is this a major part of the book and a lot of the book, there is a whole nother arc regarding what's actually going on at Ithaca. You see, for the last 10 years, Odysseus' wife has been getting slammed by suitors, and it's about time that she married one of them because it's been a while. So there is this whole massive political component to the Odyssey that is also going to have to be adapted in this movie. So to basically sum up my points, the Odyssey is the original hero's journey. It's filled to the brim with a ton of amazing moments, potentially a bunch of amazing set pieces, and all in all, if this is adapted properly, this could go down as one of the greatest movies of all time. But herein lies the problem. I do not know if it's feasibly realistic for the Odyssey to be properly adapted, at least not in just one movie. Even if he was somehow able to get this a 4-hour runtime, it's just, I don't think he'd have the time. You would have to squeeze in way too much. So much would end up getting rushed and lost in translation. I think that if this ends up being a trilogy, kind of like the Dark Knight, and each one gets their own 3-hour time, sort of like Lord of the Rings, it could be done, but I genuinely do not know, if I'm being quite honest. The good news, though, is if anyone is going to try and tackle this, I am glad it's Christopher Nolan. He truly has never been afraid to push the boundaries of what is possible in cinema, and even if this ends up not being the greatest story ever put to film, I can guarantee you what he is able to do with it will be groundbreaking for the future of what movies can do. All in all, I am beyond excited to see the Odyssey. I am super nervous. I really don't know how this is going to go down, but more than anything, I just cannot believe that someone is actually going for it.